Hello, this is Agni Rajnikant, President and founder of Shelter Shelters nonprofit, along with one of our esteemed volunteers, Anush Palamraju. Today, we're doing an exclusive interview with Andrew Funk, a homeless advocate from Barcelona, Spain.
Is running an organization called Homeless Entrepreneur that helps create opportunities for homeless people that want to be active working citizens. Right, so I have to make sure that our community is healthy and growing, and we're able to improve what we're doing, so that way we can come up with better solutions. We have four main programs. One is a homeless helpline. It's a telephone line.
Yeah.
That's international. We have a homeless voices program, which is basically like communication consultancy and helping them connect to resources so they can increase their income and build their assets. And then we have a 12-month program called Help Program, which basically accompanies them to overcome all their issues within 1 year, so they can get a job and keep it, which is the most important aspect, right? And then the last is a housing program that we created called Homeless Hostels Work, which has turned empty hostels into an asset for homeless people and also the owners of the buildings.
That's great. So you talked a little bit about jobs, right? But I've heard that, like some homeless people, they have like one or two jobs, but still they're not able to like get out of the homelessness state. How are you helping them in that instance, and like what can they do to overcome that?
Well, it's important to understand we focus on a very clear target, if you will, of homeless people that are willing and able to participate in that process and do not have severe mental health issues or severe drug problems. That doesn't mean that we don't believe they deserve support. It just means that the resources, the tools, and network we have are designed to help a specific group. And regarding those, I mean, for example, in 2007 in Europe, 8% of the employed population was part of the working poor, right? And 7.8% was unemployed. So how do we help people that have jobs get better jobs? It's the same as anyone, which is focus on education, right? Yeah. So, for example, we have a collaboration with IBM. They have a program called Skills Build, and that's basically connecting the homeless people in our program with the right training that they need, that the companies are actually looking for. So, if you're going to teach homeless people how to sew or how to make candles and things like that, I guess it's okay. I don't think it's competitive, and I don't think it's really thinking about the future of work. So if you want to improve their situation, then you have to really understand the job market, what companies want and need, and then train them so that way they can be competent and competitive workers.
That's really great.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced homelessness yourself? Like, have you seen like people, kids, like, have you yourself also experienced homelessness?
Yeah, well, that's actually why I created the organization. I was homeless myself for a year and a half. My situation was a bit different than a lot of other people's. We raised 300,000 euros for a company. I was going to have my first son. And that kind of spiraled because the money that we had got burnt in 6 months on salaries. It was mismanaged by some of the partners, and then that caused problems as well at home. So I experienced homelessness myself. I wanted to solve my problem. I did that, and then I wanted to help other people. So that's how the organization got started. I do have firsthand experience with that. Obviously, I haven't gone through all types of homelessness. There are things that I've not gone through and others that I have. But really, it's taking from my experience that I learned through my story and learning from others as we've been growing and working on what we're doing.
Really great what you're doing.
Yeah, that's really great. Building on that, have you ever been in a homeless shelter?
Yeah, I've been in homeless shelters. Before the coronavirus, I was spending 1 to 5 nights sleeping in the street around the world for the last 3.5 years. So for every month, anywhere to Times Square, which is quite cold in March, to the World Economic Forum, in Davos, 20 below zero in a teepee, to the Cannes Festival for films, right, in France. So when it comes to the shelters, it's not a place I want to be. there are different types of shelters, obviously, but I actually wasn't able to enter a shelter myself when I needed one because I didn't fit the bill. If you're not as bad off as some people, then you're not really accepted because they're like, no, we don't, we only help people that have extreme issues. So the fact that I was working I think working poor get discriminated against in the social services.
Okay, so can you tell us what the conditions are like in a homeless shelter? Like, you said like you didn't want to be in there. Like, can you tell us a little bit more why?
Well, every shelter is different, every city, every country, but for the most part, it's kind of military, if you will. You have too many people in there, not personalized. You have a lot of mental health issues within there, and there's just a lot of stress, I think. Every shelter is different, so I can't speak for every shelter. I have to speak on an individual basis. But my personal opinion is, I don't think there's one that I'd want to be at, but I also don't think that they should be created to be a place to want to stay at forever. We have it's not a shelter, it's a homeless, it's a social hostel, if you will, in which we saved 19 homeless people from that situation. 4 of those people have actually gotten jobs since, and we're working with the other 15 to help them enter the professional world and reach their goals. But every shelter, every home, every hostel has different characteristics, and it wouldn't be fair for me to say that I love or hate them. But I think it would be fair to say that they're all improvable, and they should be seen as a stepping stone back into normal housing, because a shelter is not normal housing, or it should not be.
Yeah, so also with like the recent COVID-19 like pandemic, and like there's like multiple new homeless people there are going onto the streets. Yeah. So what like solution do you offer to this problem, and like how are you helping them out?
Well, I mean, the first thing is we set up the homeless helpline, right? So anyone that needs help can actually call, and they can explain the situation, and we can try to see if we're able to connect them with certain resources from what we have. So I would recommend a homeless helpline in every city. And then besides that, you have the Homeless Voices, which is giving them a voice to make sure that they're telling their story. Otherwise, you just hear what's going on in the news, which is not, let's just say, it's not the norm, it's the exception. So giving them a voice and listening to them and connecting them to resources that are available and normally just undetected. And then in our specific case, we have a program that provides 9 managers from professional development, health, housing, education, sales, legal, financial, communication, and mentoring. So I think people need a lot of support. Community needs to open up, and the homeless people as well. Sorry, I have a 1-year-old daughter. So she likes to speak when I'm speaking.
It's okay.
So what I was saying was we offer that intense program. I think other organizations need to provide some kind of holistic program as well. And then obviously they need housing, right? So if you have empty hotels or hostels or even homes, they could be used in that sense to house people that are willing and able to participate. So I do think that homeless people, it's a situation, it's not who they are. So I think they need to participate in the role of improving their situation. So I don't think it's just throwing people in a hostel or a hotel and letting them stay there. I think they need to be contributing to their community and participating in the process, with the exception that they're not able to for other reasons that deal with mental health and addictions probably.
Yeah, so the people that are facing like housing insecurity and like experiencing homelessness currently, like to solve it, should you just like cancel rent or like make housing more affordable? Like, what do you think?
Well, I mean, government could obviously subsidize part of the rent to help the owners as well, right? Because if you just cancel all the rent, then you have to think about other people that are renting. right? And those with money tend to be protected more than those without it. So one thing could be policies to help support people so they don't go into the streets. And another thing is to support the people that are renting as well. I think you have to take care of the entire community. And what was the other question you asked about what the government can do? Or
Yeah.
well, I mean, government first needs to listen to its citizens, right? And needs to understand what they're looking for. One thing I think should not be done is it should not be criminalized. Okay, I think that's clear. From there, I think there needs to be a community response, and there needs to be more research to understanding what people need and where those sources are available. Normally, what takes place is people go for the basic needs. So you're looking at home, obviously it's important, food, right, and clothing, right? But this is the traditional response to any kind of situation. We have to keep in mind too that the homeless crisis has been around before the COVID crisis, and when the COVID crisis goes away, the homeless crisis will still be there, right? So this is something that I think people need to understand, and there needs to be change in policy, obviously, to make that happen. And we believe there needs to be more hands-on approach to helping homeless people become active working citizens, or at least contributing citizens, because if they're retired, obviously they're not going to work, but they can participate in the community, volunteer. But there needs to be a change of roles. Instead of rewarding people or subsidizing people for what they don't have or their discapacities, you should reward people for what they do well, in my opinion.
That's true. To go more on like the homeless shelters, what flaws or limitations do you find in Spain's shelters and shelters that you've seen? Are there things that need to be improved on? Like, what things do you think should be improved on?
I mean, the biggest flaw is that they're not using the space really to help people get back into society. It's more like a resting place from all the chaos and madness that's going on. So it's like a shelter, right? And it should be a launch pad, in my opinion. So it should be a place that gives people the tools to get up and out. That would be the biggest criticism that I have, if I was to do it constructively. And flaws, everything is flawed and everything has positive points. I think the Vagrant Act in 1597 in England, if I'm not mistaken, was basically you could be put to death for being homeless, right? Like they were take a look at it, but they basically, they could be punished corporally, and also they were sent to other countries if they were homeless. Basically, they were kicked out of where they were at if they did not have a home. So I think we've evolved to a certain extent, but in other senses we haven't. So obviously a shelter is much better than not having one, but a shelter has to be a stepping stone, in my personal opinion, to understand really the community and give them a voice, but also they have to be responsible. And I think in many shelters, they're not seen as a potential contributor to society, right? So our goal is turning a liability into an asset, if you will, from a financial standpoint, but also from an individual standpoint, where they're not seen as being able to add any value. So they're just there and being taken care of, and that's where assistance comes into place. But when you realize that every human being can contribute and add value to society, it takes more time, but you can actually receive more than you put in, which is important, right? Because we have to make sure that society makes its effort to participate, but also those that you're helping. And if you tell them they're helpless and they can't do anything and they're no good, people believe that stuff. So I just think that shelters in that regard could be seen probably in a better light if it was like a launch pad. Like, I want to go there to get back on my feet, not I want to go there so that way I don't have to go back to the street.
Correct.
Yeah. Going off of that, because like many homeless have trouble getting back into society, do you think the homeless are treated equally compared to the average citizen, or do you think they're treated less equally, or what? Can you name a few limitations that the homeless have compared to the average citizen?
Well, I mean, if you're poor, you're affected more than anyone in every aspect, right? If it's warmer, you can't pay for electricity. If it's colder, you can't pay for heat. That you don't have the opportunity to take care of yourself as much or protect yourself in that regard. So I would definitely say that when you have less, you're considered as having less value, and when you have less value, people want to participate. They don't have. They're not as excited to work with them. Okay, so if they want to get a job, how would you imagine going to a place and saying, "Okay, I'd like to work here," and they're like, "Okay, perfect. What's your address?"
Oh, so background matters.
Where, of course. And also you think, how is someone supposed to send money to pay for your check, right? How are they going to pay you if you don't have a bank account? So there's some basic obstacles that exist when you're poor, and poor is not just economically. It could be spiritually, it could be mentally, it could be physically, education. So when we talk about poverty, you have to think about many different things, not just economically, but definitely you're discriminated against more if you are poor. I don't know any place that treats poor people better than they do the rich people. There's a quote, see if I can find this, that I liked, which is quite good. If you give me 1 second. In a country well governed, poverty is something to be ashamed of. In a country badly governed, wealth is something to be ashamed of. And that's Confucius, right? So I think for the most part, we need to ask ourselves how we treat people and how we treat those that need more. Okay?
Correct. Yeah.
So if somebody needs more, then the dynamic of companies and individuals changes as well, because they know they need something. So it's a little bit different. It's like a friend of yours, the friend that comes and never has money to pay for a coffee or for a Coke or something, and you're always inviting them, right? Mm-hmm. This can happen even when you're living in a quote unquote normal neighborhood. So that changes the dynamic of how they treat it and what they do, and also their expectations in their community.
Yeah, it's so terrible of how homeless are treated, right? So what advice would you give to someone who is new to becoming homeless, or has just become, who's facing housing insecurity and has just come to the homelessness state?
Well, I mean, there needs to be a safety net from the government, and then you need to turn that safety net into a trampoline, right, to help bounce people back up. So you should have organizations and people in the community that can help, but keep in mind, sometimes people don't want help, or they don't accept it. So the big question is, first, how can you identify those that want to receive support and those that don't, and how can you provide support to those that want to receive it, and those that don't want to, how do you help them in a positive way?
Okay. Relating to all of us, how can the average citizen be more aware, or what can they do to help alleviate the stress of being homeless, the severity of the problem?
First thing is recognize that
Did it lag out?
I think you like that. Mr. Fong?
You don't have the knowledge to help knowledge, so they need to learn to go through. Yeah?
I think you lagged out.
Yeah, you timed out for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can hear you better.
It's okay? Okay. Okay. So what I was saying, what were we talking about?
What can you, like,
How people can help. Okay. So the first thing people need to do to change anything or to help is to have knowledge about what they want to do. So they need to know the people's names, situation. They really need to do more research to understand the situation. And then they need to recognize how they can participate. And then when they recognize how they can participate, then they can act to create change. But the first thing is people need to get some real knowledge about homelessness, people going through it, and not try to change the world, because you can't help someone if you don't even know their first name. So you can't pretend to understand what they need to be happy. So I would just say everyone can start by getting to know one homeless person and building a friendship with that person. And also don't go into it thinking that you can or you should change their life.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your advice, Mr. Funk. So anything else you would like to say?
No, just appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys. If you can share the video whenever you are, I suppose you're going to do something with the video.
Yeah, we're going to like edit it and then we're going to like share it soon.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I would just say if you invite your community to get to know our work and donate or support or volunteer, so that way we can collaborate. And if there's anything we can do as well with Shawls for Shelter, more than happy to do so. So for me, it's just I appreciate your interest in learning about what we do. And if there's any small action that we can do to create some kind of impact where you're at and where we're at, I'm more than happy to do so. So thank you for the opportunity to share my experience with you guys, and hope you guys are able to do something with what I've explained.
Thank you, Mr. Funk, for taking the time to do an interview with us.
Yeah,
it
thank
really
you,
sheds
Mr.
a
Funk.
new light on the homeless for us.
My pleasure. So wish you guys the best. Thanks for caring about trying to help homeless people. And I would love to learn more from you guys in the future, why you're doing what you're doing, and what inspires you to do that. So if you want to share that in the future, that'd be great. And if there's anything that you guys need, just let me know. And hopefully we can do something in the future as well between the organizations.
For sure.
Thank you, Mr. Funk. Thank you for your time a lot. We greatly appreciate it. See you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Take care.
Stay in touch.
Bye.
Bye.
Right,
Bye.
bye.